The sun peaks faintly between the icy mountains, and the sounds of nature slowly begin to drown out the winter silence. The white snow spreads like a thick blanket upon which wildlife is drawn in timid colors. In the middle of a dense forest ravaged by a merciless winter, a young deer appears among the dense vegetation looking for a bit of food. It seems to have found some fresh shoots that survived the snowfall, so today's meal is assured. However, something isn't right. Suddenly, a distant howl echoes in the silence of the valley, a clear omen of death in this merciless ecosystem. Confused, lethargic, and exhausted after months of harsh winter, the deer ponders where to flee, but it's already too late. There's no escape. Hidden among the icy landscape, a hungry pack of wolves has already decided the fate of the helpless deer, who, no matter what he does, will not be able to escape his imminent end. In the blink of an eye, the pack launches an attack, and the white snow turns red. The deer will never return, but the pack has ended a hunger of days without knowing the taste of warm prey. It's raw, but it's just one of the stories hidden in wild Alaska. Located in the far north of the American continent, Alaska is a region of more than 1.7 million square kilometers, where nature has free rein to show its purest and most untamed side. Throughout this vast animal empire, temperatures rule life. With harsh winters where the sun sets for months, icy winds freeze everything in their path, and the green forests and grasslands are covered in a thick, sterile layer of snow. However, just as low temperatures threaten life, all this harshness of nature comes to an end with the arrival of spring. After months of intense snowfall, the cold, in a show of mercy, relents, and a never-before-seen wildlife spectacle is about to unfold. The sun, little by little, begins to shine as before, the thick blanket of snow begins to melt away, and the dormant vegetation slowly awakens from its winter slumber. With the arrival of spring, every corner of what was once a frozen world comes alive, and Alaska reveals its most generous and welcoming side. Thousands of displaced people return from their exile. The white forests soon become vivid fields of color, and the frozen rivers, a remnant of the abundance of yesteryear, are once again filled with life. The only thing better than spring's bounty is the arrival of summer's warmth, where all the scars of the cruel winter have been left behind. And the Alaskan ecosystem is awash in an ecstasy of waste and greed. With all the melting caused by rising temperatures, rivers are becoming more abundant, hosting an unprecedented diversity. The Alaskan coast is also no exception to this spectacle of animal life, where food is abundant, attracting millions of wild visitors from around the world. One of those travelers who, due to the abundance, decides to visit the coastal waters is the imposing humpback whale. After traveling thousands of miles from its breeding grounds on the equator, the colossal humpback whale makes its triumphant arrival in Alaskan waters, where it will spend months taking advantage of the summer's abundance of life. Weighing up to 40 tons and measuring over 15 meters in length, this giant of the waters has a mission after crossing the Pacific: to feed as if there were no tomorrow. Given its vast size, it's easy to assume that this mammal won't be satisfied with just a few fish, so only an ecosystem as imposing as summer Alaska can tolerate such a demand for resources. The humpback whale's diet is primarily based on tiny yet nutritious krill, as well as small fish. Although, unlike toothed whales, they do not significantly use their echolocation abilities to locate their prey, this does not prevent them from finding their food in the dark Alaskan waters. Using its knowledge of ocean currents as well as its prodigious memory, the humpback whale knows just where to go to encounter those huge schools of krill. Once it locates the vast schools of whales, this hungry mammal, with no time to waste, charges forward at full speed, charging headlong toward its countless prey. Given its imposing size, the humpback whale literally opens its mouth, and instantly, millions of krill and small fish are sucked into its jaws. Typically, this cetacean seeks out large concentrations of prey to minimize the number of attacks, as each one represents a significant expenditure of energy. With millions of krill already in its mouth, the whale must get rid of all the water in order to swallow its nutritious food. This is when their large baleen teeth play a vital role in their feeding, serving as a filter to drain water, while also holding all their tiny prey in their mouths, ready to be devoured, and they can swallow up to hundreds of kilos of food in one go. Of course, millions of krill won't always be huddled together, patiently waiting for the whale to draw them into its stomach. Sometimes the cetacean must be quite diligent to herd the schools and then launch its lethal attacks. To this end, like any skilled hunter, the humpback whale employs a series of advanced strategies. While it is usually an experienced solitary fisherman, on occasion, when schools of fish are of a desirable size, several cetaceans can work together. One of the most widely used techniques for herding schools of whales is bubble netting. Up to a dozen whales can participate in this technique, working in perfect coordination to facilitate the capture of their numerous prey. Swimming up from the depths and slowly spiraling beneath schools of krill or fish, the whales gradually release air through their blowholes, creating large barriers of bubbles that trap their prey and force them into small areas where they are more vulnerable. Already in this compromising position, humpback whales finish the job by ramming into the herded schools, opening their large mouths, often even leaping out of the water to capture their prey close to the surface. Another moment when the humpback whales, also known as humpback whales, emerge, is when they dazzle with their highly elaborate acrobatics. Their voluptuous bodies aside, these cetaceans demonstrate their agility. By leaping at full speed across the surface and performing incredible twisting pirouettes before landing on their backs in the water. Although, given their imposing size and displays of agility, it might seem as though these whales enjoy cruising these waters without any threat. The truth is that the Alaskan coasts harbor an imminent threat to the survival of these cetaceans. Hidden in the depths, stalking the humpback whale, the orca is a voracious predator that will not hesitate to take the life of this colossal beast to satisfy its appetite. Although a killer whale cannot successfully hunt an adult whale in a one-on-one duel, large herds of these hunters pose a significant threat to their survival, potentially harassing whales and causing a painful death, with dozens of these vicious marine predators delivering painful bites to the mammal. Leaving behind the cruel acts of the orcas, thousands of miles away in the interior of untamed Alaska, where surreal landscapes rise, making us doubt whether we're still on land, another species is taking advantage of all the water resources brought by the Alaskan summer. For salmon, the melting of the countless rivers and lakes is nature's call to begin their very complex breeding season, where millions of fish will spawn. While these fish enjoy this time of year, probably no wild species is more pleased than the Kodiak bear with the arrival of these endless schools of salmon to the shores. For the Kodiak bear, The arrival of these vast schools of salmon means it's time to regain all the weight lost during its winter lethargy. After surviving spring by scavenging the carcasses left behind by the cruel winter and supplementing its omnivorous diet with emerging vegetation, plants, roots, berries, and other fruits, this gigantic mammal knows exactly where to go to take advantage of the unprecedented abundance of prey that the melting ice has created. The streams of Kodiak in southwest Alaska are the gathering place where these cunning bears await the salmon run. As the largest brown bear subspecies on Earth, with males reaching 1,500 pounds and 10 feet tall when standing on their hind legs, these giants won't settle for small meals. During this time, they can consume more than 30 kilograms of nutritious food that helps them replenish their fat reserves. For this large bear, it is extremely important to take advantage of every available opportunity to feed, as they must gain 20 to 30% of their weight before winter takes hold again in Alaska and food becomes scarce. Despite being a solitary species, except for the mother and her cubs, when large numbers of salmon gather in a stream, dozens of bears gather to begin the hunt. Their great cunning has allowed them to develop a communication system that minimizes territorial fights during the hunt. This is how most manage to take full advantage of this feast. Although it is endowed with a gigantic size, the Kodiak is generally more of a strategist than a fierce predator. Because of this, it uses intelligent hunting, taking advantage of small prey, and minimizing the amount of energy expended during the hunt. To enjoy the delicious fresh salmon, this mammal waits patiently at strategic points, such as rapids, where schools of fish struggle to overcome the strong currents. When the moment is right, the large brown bear makes a swift and precise move. Holding the fish in its sharp claws. The adaptability of this ursid to hunting is undoubtedly enviable. In addition to using their sturdy claws, some are capable of submerging their heads underwater and catching fish with their sharp fangs, up to 8 centimeters long. When not fishing or when salmon runs become scarce, the Kodiak bear often roams the vast coastline in search of small mollusks, crabs, or seaweed. This gigantic opportunist will not pass up any prey, so if a small rodent dares to cross its path, it will not hesitate to ambush it with a stealthy attack. The colossus is generally most active during the day, tending to rest at nightfall. However, when food supplies are insufficient, it will not hesitate to use part of the night to indulge its strict diet, even dedicating 18 hours a day to this arduous mission. However, after a hearty feast, there's always time for rest. To do so, they choose to lie down in a quiet area, away from danger, and preferably near a food source. Depressions in the ground or wooded areas are their favorite places to drift off into a brief slumber. Its thick, dense, dark brown or orange-blonde fur provides excellent insulation against the area's frigid temperatures. At the same time, it acts as a water repellent, keeping the mammal warm and comfortable. Unfortunately for the Kodiak, its enviable coat is often not enough to cope with the coming winter, with temperatures reaching -40, so it must find shelter. Although this bear isn't a natural builder, it does know how to take advantage of existing shelters. To do this, it sets out in search of a comfortable place that offers protection from the elements. In general, they prefer rocky caves and mountain slopes, although a few settle for large hollows under the roots of giant trees. Once they've chosen their home for the next few months, the Alaskan bear makes a few improvements to make their new home a little more welcoming. Using their indestructible claws, they remove traces of rock and earth to expand their shelter and increase its security. When the dreaded winter arrives, when snow becomes omnipresent, the landscapes are covered in a pristine blanket of white, and temperatures drop to -20. Females are the first to take refuge in their burrows and prepare for winter lethargy. Although this relentless mammal doesn't enter a true state of hibernation, while awaiting the arrival of spring, it reduces its metabolic activity to a minimum. During this period, from October to April, the anteater remains hidden in its cozy shelter without needing any food. It lives off the fat reserves it managed to harvest through hard work during the bountiful summer. Although the most sensible ants protect themselves from the harsh climate, some rebels choose not to wait in their confined burrow, remaining active for most of the winter. Typically, it's the males who first abandon the den after months of rest in the absence of food. Exhausted mothers and their cubs sometimes prefer to wait until the end of June. This is when a new chapter begins in the fight for survival of the giant Alaskan bear. While the Kodiak has weathered the harsh winter with honor, the little puffin returns to the Alaskan coast with the onset of spring to take advantage of the breeding season. This striking seabird, just 30 centimeters tall, is easily recognizable by its physical characteristics. Its vibrant black fur on its robust head, back, and wings contrasts with the white of its chest and belly. These expert swimmers have led a solitary life for most of the year in the waters of the North Pacific. Thanks to their short but powerful legs that act as rudders, they are able to propel themselves underwater like a professional diver, reaching great depths in search of food. With the unforgiving winter a mere memory, these adventurous seabirds gather near the coast with their companions days before returning to the mainland. That unforgettable place where they once hatched. The colonies organize into small flocks in the water, based on the physical condition of each individual. The strongest are lucky as they are the first to set foot on the cliff. By then, they have countless burrows dug into the slopes, protected by the green vegetation. And at the edge of the cliff, where it is extremely easy to flap their wings at 80 kilometers per hour in search of fresh food. There is no doubt that this is the perfect place to nest their future offspring, protected from ferocious predators like the Arctic fox and the abominable sea lions. Unfortunately, the tireless wildlife shows no mercy to the weakest. The last to land have not been so lucky, as all the nesting sites have already been occupied. For them, the only remaining option is to try their luck next season. Although he remained infinitely alone in the ocean, upon returning to his former home, the male puffin begins the search for his now familiar female. Despite separating while living in the waters of the Pacific, these creatures are monogamous, and they will reunite on the surface of Alaska for the arduous task of nesting their future chick. Typically, the male returns to the burrow where they both lived the previous season, attracting the female with a distinctive grunt and a nod of the head. To strengthen the bond, the pair rub their beaks together in a gesture of affection, indicating that the relationship is better than ever. During this time, the beaks acquire vibrant colors such as yellow, orange, and red, becoming a seductive weapon that the male uses to attract the female. After settling in, this unique team will dedicate weeks of their time to perfecting the burrow. Both partners participate in the excavation process. With its formidable beak, one loosens the soil to remove any debris that gets in its way, while the other removes dirt from the nest with its clawed feet. This arduous work will allow the future parents to build a large and comfortable cave that sometimes exceeds a meter in length. At the same time, puffins compete with other species such as rodents and other seabirds for underground tunnels. This bold bird will not hesitate to peck vigorously at any intruding rabbit it finds in its burrow. For the latter, the smartest option is to retreat as quickly as possible. However, for the established couple, the work doesn't end there. The male and female must embark on an adventure to collect soft, comfortable materials with which to build the long-awaited nest deep within the burrow. The collected grasses and feathers provide excellent insulation, while other, sturdier elements such as stems and even pieces of string will help shape the nesting chamber. After a long day at work, the pair deserves a comforting rest. During these moments of relaxation, they can spend hours preening on the ground, and they take advantage of the opportunity to spread an oily substance from a gland located at the base of their tails. This lipid-rich compound acts as a waterproofing agent, repelling water and preserving the small seabird's beautiful plumage. The long-awaited moment has arrived. The mother lays a single white egg inside the cave. The dedicated parents will do everything possible to keep it safe, taking turns incubating it to ensure the right temperature for the chick to develop inside. To do this, the father on duty rests his vascularized abdomen on the protected egg, transferring all the heat it needs. Often, it is the devoted mother who takes on the majority of the incubation duties. While this is happening, the male has no time to rest. His job is to maintain the home, performing digging and cleaning tasks. He also often perches upright at the burrow entrance, in an unwavering display of dominance when interacting with neighboring puffins. After 39 to 45 days of arduous incubation, joy floods the parents when the tiny chick finally hatches. At this point, one of the caretakers goes out in search of food for their young. The father or mother catches tiny fish species such as herring and sprat, then lines them up with incredible skill in their large beaks and carries them home, where the chick is waiting. The chick reaches maturity at 40 to 50 days old, at which point it must face the dangerous but inevitable task of leaving the nest forever. The inexperienced young usually emerge from the burrow at night, when most predators are resting. Given his immaturity in flight, this daring explorer lets himself fall off the cliff and reach the immensity of the sea. The ocean will be the young puffin's school, where only the fittest will survive. It is there that he will learn to feed himself, while staying away from maritime predators. There's no doubt his journey is just beginning, and when he finally reaches sexual maturity at 4 years old, he will return to the cliff again. But this time, he will be the one in charge of ensuring the reproduction of the species. Although Alaska's climate tests even the strongest of animals, not all species migrate or hibernate during the winter. Some, like the striking Arctic fox, have withstood the harsh temperatures with honor. Its thick white fur is a real heating tool, allowing it to survive in the Arctic tundras at temperatures as low as -40 degrees Celsius. Of course, in these harsh conditions, shelter is essential. This is why this cunning canid lives in large burrows, with intertwined tunnels like a labyrinth, and numerous entrances and exits. In this cave, measuring up to 100 square meters they call home. They take refuge whenever necessary from the relentless cold storms, and of course, also from lurking predators. The tireless search for food is one of the most demanding tasks for this animal. Since the small Arctic fox weighs only 4 kilograms, it finds it impossible to hunt for very large prey, so it must settle for rodents, fish, and some bird species. By far, their favorite prey is the lemming, a small rodent that lives primarily in tundras. Given their undeniable nutritional value, as well as the ease with which the canine plunges its head into the dense snow to capture the rodent, in times of abundance, lemmings are more than enough to keep a family of foxes alive. However, when the endless colonies of lemmings are just a fond memory, the stealthy snow fox will not hesitate to devour any tiny prey that crosses its path. Voles and wild animals, schools of fish and bird eggs are all on the menu for this mammalian predator. Furthermore, these animals are trained to be cunning scavengers. The canine can follow bears for hours, feeding on the feast of carcasses the colossus leaves behind. When meat is scarce, it must resort to devouring algae, plants, and juicy berries, so it can be considered an omnivorous species. Faced with extreme needs, in a desperate attempt to survive, the well-adapted Arctic fox will not think twice about consuming its own feces. With the arrival of spring, the need for reproduction becomes apparent. The pair of future parents begins preparing the burrow. It is extremely important for them to remove any snow or dirt that might hinder their movement through the many tunnels by digging. This way, they ensure a clear path to quickly evacuate their young before an unexpected predator visits. After mating, which takes place between April and May, the pregnant female will receive support from the dedicated male to help her cope with the pregnancy and care for her long-awaited offspring. After a short gestation of just over 50 days, the first-time mother prepares to give birth to her 5 cubs. For Arctic foxes, reproductive abundance is directly related to food availability. When lemming populations are at their peak, a pair of canids can produce 18 offspring. However, if prey is scarce, these cautious animals prefer not to reproduce, since without food, the survival of their pups is far from guaranteed. The tiny cubs are born completely blind, so they depend on their competent parental team to survive in the wilds of Alaska. For the next 3 weeks, the mother will remain with her cubs. She remains with them in the den, offering shelter and nursing them on demand so they grow up healthy and strong. Occasionally, young females who have not been able to raise babies gather in the den to support mom in the exhausting task of caring for her young. The enthusiastic father is not far behind. The need to keep his defenseless cubs safe drives him to go hunting. He is the one who is temporarily in charge of providing food for his large family, as the furry little ones, just a month old, lie in wait for a piece of fresh meat. It is at this point that the young foxes begin to venture out of the burrow. Learning to catch a rodent on their own is a challenge for them, as their movements are clumsy and unpracticed. Fortunately, mom is there to teach them everything they need to know, and for at least 5 months, both parents will remain by their side as solid guides. Venturing into the Alaskan landscape is as fascinating as it is dangerous. A reckless pup has strayed beyond the permitted limits, unaware that a vicious Arctic wolf is lurking. By the time he realizes it, it's too late, and the little animal collapses into the wolf's jaws. This is undoubtedly devastating news for the parents and for their siblings. It's a bitter lesson that straying from the den could be fatal. While the elusive fox pack skillfully moves from place to place to survive, the formidable elk dominates the Alaskan biome. From the far southeast to the frigid Arctic slopes in the north of the region, there is virtually no area to which this deer cannot adapt. For these deer, protection from voracious predators like foxes and grizzly bears, while also having a nearly endless source of food, is of utmost importance. This is why, cleverly, they are found primarily in the lush boreal forests of Alaska's interior, where nature provides them with an abundance of verdant vegetation. Standing at over 2 meters tall at the shoulders, and sometimes weighing more than 500 kilograms, this faithful representative of the largest deer species on Earth won't settle for scraps of food. A single moose must consume around 30 kilograms of nutritious forage every day to maintain its shape. To meet this demanding goal, this grazing herbivore devours a wide variety of plants and fruits that cross its path. For the colossal deer, the growing grasses, as well as the drooping shoots of Alaskan willows, are a succulent food source. In fact, it is thanks to these terrestrial plantations that the moose obtains most of the enviable 20,000 calories that make up its demanding nutritional needs. However, the dedicated mammal is determined to maintain the most balanced diet possible, and if necessary, will dedicate hours of its day to this beloved goal. This is why it sets out in search of numerous water lilies and algae, which are an exquisite source of sodium, an essential element for maintaining its health, and which terrestrial plants lack. As the only deer species capable of feeding underwater, in a fascinating display of physical fitness, the expert diver can dive up to 5 meters deep in various water sources until he finds food. His elaborate nose is equipped with a group of strong muscles that close the entrance to the nostrils like a curtain when he dives, preventing water from entering. The voluminous rivers and swamps are not only an effective food source for moose, but are also a favorite place to relax after eating. During the warm summer, there's nothing like a dip to get rid of the heat accumulated during work. Plus, being in the water keeps pesky blackfly pests at bay for the time being. Although this deer is a mostly solitary animal, when autumn arrives, it's time to seek out a mate, as the long-awaited breeding season has arrived. While the coveted female emits a series of moan-like calls to attract the most suitable suitors, the formidable male prepares to conquer. During this period, the far from monogamous male will try his best to reproduce with as many females as possible. And of course, this won't be an easy task. Through virile grunts audible to any female within 500 meters, the males make themselves known to their future mate. However, for the solitary elk, it's not enough just to find a female in heat across this vast territory. He's not the only one who's come to court her. That's why the male, who, unlike the female, is equipped with a pair of strong antlers nearly 2 meters in span, prepares to dominate his rivals. In some cases, simply presenting himself as a dominant specimen will be enough to make the weaker ones retreat without hesitation. This is because both the size and symmetry of the tips of his webbed antlers are an indication that the male enjoys enviable health and strength. This is undoubtedly attractive to any female, and at the same time, a warning sign for young and old specimens with small antlers that leave much to be desired. But sometimes, when the need to mate is imperative, a simple warning won't suffice. Using their antlers, two males battle for the right to the female, in a wild dance that begins with shoving to test the rival's strength, and sometimes resorts to violent clashes of their antlers that can result in fatal injuries. When the loser finally withdraws, the blessed victor approaches the female, who discreetly watches the fight, with the undeniable goal of expanding her lineage. Although life in Alaska is anything but easy for moose, they've been lucky, as it's almost impossible for them to end up on the menu for the ferocious orca, the largest animal predator on planet Earth. At over 8 meters long and sometimes weighing up to 8 tons, the largest member of the dolphin family rules the ocean depths among the Alaskan islands with iron will. An exhausted seal rests peacefully on the surface of a tiny ice floe, unaware of a gigantic dorsal fin lurking just beyond. In a powerful display of muscular supremacy, the orca charges from the depths, easily breaking the ice floe. By now, the stunned seal has fallen into the water, and although it desperately kicks its flippers to escape, it is no match for a powerful super predator that, in moments, reaches speeds of 56 kilometers per hour. Thus, after a brief struggle, the other seals can only watch as their companion vanishes in the orca's sharp teeth. Although the colossal dolphin, on its own, is capable of terrifying the different species of animals that inhabit the coastal seas of Alaska, the truth is that this intelligent swimmer knows very well that, to survive the adversities that the wild world has to offer, the wisest thing is to surround yourself with good company. This is why orcas choose to establish societies that are as complex as they are organized, building a barrier of giant, practically indestructible mammals. Unlike other species, these groups are based on matrilineal societies, where the oldest female, known as the matriarch, leads the group, while her daughters remain with her for the rest of their lives. And, over time, new generations expand their extended family. Since female dolphins can live up to 90 years, approximately 4 generations of orcas from the same lineage make up the pod. Furthermore, they are so sociable that they occasionally form a new association, called a community, where several pods of orcas that do not share a common lineage gather temporarily to roar through the vastness of the ocean. However, some rogue males decide to break away from these elaborate social structures, wandering alone in the waters and occasionally approaching a group with fertile females to reproduce. To keep the group united and always focused on a common goal, orcas have developed an elaborate communication system. Through underwater vocalizations that include pulsed calls, whistles, and clicks, the formidable pod can distinguish their future prey underwater, orient themselves toward it, and at the same time, communicate to the pod the strategy for the formidable collective attack. To achieve this, all members of a group use the same dialect, which consists of a series of repetitive calls that differ in each matriarchal lineage in order to differentiate themselves from neighboring orcas. As soon as they are born, the pod is responsible for teaching their newborns this distinctive language, as this is the only way to preserve the group's identity. By emitting subtle clicks and listening to the resulting echoes, the orca's precise echolocation system has detected a small group of beluga whales exploring off the coast of Alaska. And, as hunger is pressing, the family doesn't hesitate to go hunting. For them, the plan is clear: detect a weak member and separate it from the protection of the group. In a coordinated attack, the cunning orcas scatter, surrounding the belugas, thus eliminating any escape route for the whales. As they steer them toward shallow waters, these hungry predators increase their speed. Taking the belugas by surprise, the most experienced orca viciously lunges at one of the whales, guiding it away from its pod. The aging beluga whale is isolated, facing a formidable individual it knows it cannot defeat. While a pair of orcas charge at the whale, battering it with the relentless force of their tails underwater, the rest of them drive away their comrades who came to the rescue. The more time passes, the worse the prognosis becomes for this already exhausted whale. Too stunned and tired to continue fighting, its flippers shredded by the orca's powerful bites, and unable to reach the surface to take a breath of oxygen, the beluga finally accepts its inevitable fate. However, large prey such as whales, dolphins, and seals are not the only ones that make up this apex predator's extensive diet. At times, some communities may feed primarily on more than 30 species of fresh fish, of which salmon accounts for the majority. To capture these small victims, the pack uses what is known as carousel feeding, in which, through coordinated swimming, they surround the school of fish, releasing bubbles to create a curtain that disorients their next prey. Thanks to this technique, the orcas manage to concentrate the fish in a tight ball. Then, with a vigorous fin strike, they kill more than 10 fish with each impact. After this, and without any kind of rush, each member of the group of predators takes their time devouring, one by one, the victims of this brutal attack. Regardless of the type of prey, the largest dolphin is forced to spend most of its time searching for food, as it needs to consume more than 200 kilograms of meat a day to stay alive, a task that is anything but easy. Even so, fortunate enough to have an efficient social structure, the formidable orca always has plenty of time for distractions. The anything but light animal loves to leap completely out of the water, which it constantly does as a play with its companions. Unlike other predators, this voracious swimmer has decided to use surplus kills, those not intended for food, as a pastime. The cruel orcas are capable of toying with species like sea lions until they die, only to then leave their floating carcasses at the mercy of scavengers. For this imposing dolphin, perching dead salmon on its head like a hat is part of its daily routine. While the wild orca has proclaimed its dominance of the seas, on land, with the Alaskan spring filling every corner of this welcoming yet hostile ecosystem with life, small mammals cannot be absent from the abundance that is slowly developing. Here, a small rabbit has already begun its personal feast, devouring some nutritious grass. Although it may be a rather simple meal, after having endured the inert winter, even a small bundle of herbs is a welcome nourishment. However, unbeknownst to him, the tiny rabbit has just enjoyed his last meal. On the horizon, hundreds of meters in the air, a wild predator has already spotted the small prey, and it won't let this exquisite mammal, weighing up to 2.5 kilos of meat, get away. Swooping down at top speed from the heights above, the bald eagle is one of those species that appears in the nightmares of the unfortunate members at the bottom of the Alaskan food chain. Plummeting at speeds of up to 200 kilometers per hour against the unsuspecting rabbit, this ferocious hunter of the skies gives its prey no chance of escape and, using its very sharp claws, in a matter of seconds, immobilizes and ends the life of the tender herbivore. After capturing what would be a delicacy in the midst of the cruel Alaskan winter, the bald eagle carries its prey to a safe place where it can eat in peace. Knowing that this ecosystem is full of scavengers who won't think twice about stealing your food, it's best to avoid these encounters, even if you're a ferocious bird of prey. Now, in a relatively safe place, this majestic killer guts the rabbit and devours it in just a few minutes. Probably one of the reasons the eagle knows Alaska is full of scavengers is because, on occasion, it can become one itself. Although its elegant brown plumage and white head give it the appearance of a noble bird, when food shortages come knocking, the bald eagle will quickly turn into a despicable thief. When a cunning fox is enjoying capturing prey like hares, squirrels, or mice, it's best not to let its guard down or boast about its successful hunt. Just as Alaska's bustling wildlife provided it with this prey, the bald eagle can take a far from small portion, leaving the fox empty-handed. One of the favorite victims of bald eagle kleptomania is the osprey. After a fishing job well done, with the osprey just seconds away from putting the fruit of its labor in its mouth, the bald eagle, with no sense of decency, takes what it considers its own, and feeds on what, to it, is a rather inexpensive meal. Although the bald eagle's stellar physical condition is capable of surviving the harsh winter that has hit Alaska, the truth is that most populations of these birds of prey prefer to migrate south when the thermometer reaches below zero. Of course, with the arrival of spring, these clever birds won't miss out on all the extravagance of resources this vibrant ecosystem is about to bestow. While it won't spare any small mammal that dares to graze peacefully in the forests and grasslands, the majority of this hardened carnivore's diet consists of fish. And since it won't always have an osprey to do the work for it, it sometimes has to get its talons wet to get the day's catch itself. Although with the countless catfish populations that flood Alaskan rivers, you don't have to be a fishing prodigy to get a meal, the bald eagle is a pro at pulling one of these juicy fish from the streams. Using its enviable vision, this fierce hunter is able to spot even a small fish swimming peacefully in the river. With its fearsome claws and merciless beak, practically in the sights of the bald eagle, the catfish's fate has already been written. Swooping down at high speed toward the river, but with surprising delicacy, the bird, in milliseconds, pulls the defenseless fish from the water and gives it a swift death by piercing its body with the sharp blades it carries for claws. While catching a large prey is always good news, sometimes a bulky fish can be the trigger for one of the most surprising confrontations in this entire warlike ecosystem. Despite being an apex predator, this doesn't mean the bald eagle can live a conflict-free life. In wild Alaska, this bird of prey's greatest enemy may be, in fact, another bald eagle. Because they are extremely territorial, a bald eagle will often not tolerate an intruder trying to invade its hunting grounds. So, when this happens, aerial combat is inevitable. Upon entering foreign territory, the invading eagle will immediately be harassed by the territorial bird, which will trigger a surprising aerial chase, with both birds performing impressive maneuvers and turns in the air. Often, as a sign of intimidation, the territorial bald eagle will swoop down on the intruder, all without actually touching, but with the goal of scaring the invader away. The impressive, exaggerated wing beats and loud, high-pitched screeches are also part of the strategy to defend the territory. If none of this works, hand-to-hand combat will decide the right to possess the territory. Here, through powerful wing beats, claw grabs, and merciless pecks, each eagle will show its true colors and its drive to claim victory, ensuring its survival. While bald eagles battle to impose their will, in the middle of the thick, tree-covered valley, a horned giant weighing up to 400 kilograms lies devouring exquisite grasses. Despite its thick, cold-proof coat, the arrival of spring is excellent news for the musk ox. After overcoming the harshest weather conditions brought on by the harsh Alaskan winter, during which it had to do the unthinkable to survive, that entire icy rain, with the cold reaching down to the bone, has come to an end, and spring brings with it life and abundant food everywhere for this colossal ungulate. Since they had to ascend to higher ground during the winter to avoid being trapped in the thick layer of snow that covered the valley, the muskox's first task is to descend to lower, wetter areas, where food sources are constant, even overwhelming. In contrast to the austere winter, where even a small sprout was a feast, with the arrival of spring, this uncompromising herbivore enjoys the myriad of herbs, willows, woody plants, lichens, and of course, the ever-nutritious moss. Day after day, as the thick layer of snow melts away, a green ground gains ground, revealing exquisite snacks for the ox. Thanks to its highly developed sense of smell, the musk ox is able to find tasty treats even if they're still buried beneath a convalescing layer of snow. As soon as it senses something to eat, it will dig down with its large hoof until it finds Mother Nature's gift. Of course, with fertile spring soil beneath your feet, you don't have to be a bloodhound to find food. Although its long, thick coat was a great help during those days when winter showed its harshest side. With spring taking over the Alaskan ecosystem, that heavy natural coat is no longer as necessary, so the ox will begin its molt. Over several weeks, this colossus will lose large clumps of hair, leaving a much more discreet and airy covering for the hot summer days to come. Spring is by far the most anticipated season for all male musk oxen, as it's the time to meet all those fertile females and fulfill their task of enlarging the species. The breeding season for these giants typically takes place in late spring or early summer, when Alaska shows its most bountiful side, with food flourishing everywhere and a climate that, compared to the winter hell, is a gift from heaven. Of course, as with almost all Alaskan wildlife, in this hostile ecosystem, reproduction is not a right, but a privilege. And if a male wants access to a female, he'll have to fight for her against other behemoths weighing nearly half a ton. Here, the large males will demonstrate the purpose of their up to 70-centimeter long horns. In these duels for the right to a fertile female, both males face each other head-on, at a distance of about 20 meters. Before displaying all this ferocity by charging their opponent, body postures, grunts, and snorts are immediate, with the subtle intention of getting the enemy to surrender and relinquish the precious right to mate. Of course, no matter how formidable the opponent, no ox will take a step back, and hostilities are the only way to resolve the dispute. From one second to the next, both beasts march at full speed against their nemesis, and pointing their dangerous antlers, they collide their bodies with tremendous force, capable of killing with a single impact. However, as these are two animals of such imposing dimensions, each will face its opponent again as if nothing had happened, and pushing with all its strength, will try to knock the challenger down by linking its horns with those of the opponent. After several minutes of savage, relentless fighting, one of the males eventually gives in to his wounds and the superiority of usually a larger and stronger enemy. The results of this brief but fierce battle are one male emerging as the dominant male of the herd, with every right to claim the females in the pack as his own, and another, with serious injuries and his honor in tatters, who will have to wait no less than 9 months, patiently awaiting the next breeding season, when he will once again challenge any opponent who comes his way, this time hoping for a little better luck. After an unquestionable victory in which he inflicted significant injuries on his challenger, the dominant male wastes no time and makes his move on the herd's females, initiating a subtle courtship display in which he rubs his furry body against theirs and licks them. To test their receptivity to copulation, he usually smells their genitals, and if the female approves of the mount, he will remain motionless. After repeating this process several times, the dominant male will have done his job, copulating with each of them, spreading his lineage as if there were no tomorrow. Of course, the miracle of life, or rather the miracles of life, that will result from these countless copulations will have to wait up to 9 months for their birth. When the calves are born the following summer, their father, taking responsibility for all their passionate moments during the breeding season, will help raise his little calves, protecting them from any possible threats that may approach them. In contrast to the large musk oxen that must duel to the death for the right to reproduce, nature has been much more benevolent with male sea otters, who do not even have to hesitate to throw a punch to get a mate. With males outnumbering females 5-1, this is the dream of every stud eager to spread his genes. Living in the balmy summer waters of Alaska, sea otters are among the species that remain in this demanding ecosystem, regardless of the weather conditions. For these small, 45-kilogram marine mammals, their cozy home in the middle of the sea is practically a private oasis for their relaxed lifestyle, feeding and socializing with their peers. Sea otters boast the thickest fur in the wild. Thanks to this, they can withstand even those frigid days when the Alaskan winter freezes everything in its path. Although their fur is a very useful tool for their survival, otters may not be very comfortable with it because of the plump appearance it gives these more slender Alaskan inhabitants. While musk oxen enjoy roaming the vast Alaskan tundra, virtually unhindered, the sea otter's kingdom lies in the endless waters surrounding this wild world. These mammals are professional swimmers, literally at home in water. Thanks to their powerful tails and webbed feet, which they can use as flippers, they are able to move with surprising agility through these treacherous waters. With such enviable skills in the water, despite being able to come onto land, sea otters generally choose to remain in their underwater kingdom. Of course, with all the abundance of marine life on these shores, these mammals have no problem finding food, much less being able to reach practically any place in the sea. With vast quantities of mollusks, crustaceans, and sea urchins covering the ocean floor, otters know just where to head when their stomachs start rumbling. Being natural divers, they have no problem holding their breath for quite long periods of time, and thus reaching these exquisite marine snacks. Of course, this is a task that can often take up to 60% of their day, as they search every corner of the ocean floor in search of anything resembling food. They check under rocks, dig with their paws, and don't leave a single centimeter untouched by a thorough inspection. Even the tiniest marine snack is deposited in pouch-like folds located under its armpit, so it can eat more comfortably at the surface. Despite their amazing aquatic abilities, the waters off the Alaskan coast do not belong to these gentle weasels. Even these trained swimmers cannot always escape the voracious appetite of the killer whale, the orca. Given its considerable size, the orca will never refuse to devour prey weighing up to 45 kilograms of meat in the form of an otter. In just seconds, an orca can emerge from the depths, and with its lethal bite, slice this tiniest Alaskan inhabitant in half. Of course, despite facing a superior opponent, this doesn't mean the sea otters will simply allow themselves to be devoured without a fight. Faced with the choice of standing still as a ferocious orca tears them apart or fighting for their lives, these small mammals know exactly which option to choose. Although they prefer a solitary life, for those living in large groups, living in pods is one of the best survival strategies. In these groups, each otter plays a crucial role in detecting predators like the voracious orca. Scanning the horizon for that gigantic black fin, which is almost a harbinger of death. Upon seeing the arrival of this colossal predator in the distance, the otters will leave the courage to other species and plan a quick escape to any place where an orca isn't sowing its terror. Being quite agile in the water, if they can predict an orca's attack early enough, they may end up leaving this carnivore with an empty stomach. Winning this battle However, as a fearsome apex predator, the orca has plenty of tools to hunt sea otters, with stealth being one of its main weapons. When an otter is surprised by a hungry orca just meters away, its chances of survival are almost zero, and it is almost doomed to perish in the bite of this predator. Here, driven by the desire to survive, the otter will attempt to flee into the endless ocean with a gigantic orca in its wake. Since the carnivore is much faster in the water, it's only a matter of time before its prey is caught. As one of its last resorts, the otter will swim erratically, with sharp turns and changes of direction in order to confuse the orca. If by extreme luck, the otter manages to momentarily outwit the orca, it will try to hide in the dark waters, using its fur as camouflage, or among small underwater rocks where the killer whale will never find it. Unfortunately for sea otters, the same abundance of crustaceans and mollusks that attracts hundreds of them to the Alaskan coast provides the perfect bait for the voracious orca's diet. This apex predator is joined by carnivores such as great white sharks, sea lions, and bald eagles in the hunt for these furry swimmers. While the fearful otter hides from the dark dangers of the ocean, a stealthy predator rises on the Alaskan mainland. Stretching from the coastal southeast and picturesque boreal forests to the flat Arctic tundra, there is nowhere to hide from the mighty wolf. Not even the most formidable elk is safe from this agile predator, as it has unwittingly entered the territory of a pack of hungry wolves that will not waver in their attack. In a coordinated chase that leaves the ungulate breathless, a pair of canines immobilizes the hind legs of the colossal herbivore with powerful bites. Then, in an explosion of savage fury, a third dog pounces on the defenseless animal's neck, inflicting a lethal wound. Once they have their prey, the pack begins to tear it apart, pulling the carcass in different directions with their strong bites, until they have devoured large chunks of meat, where not even the bones are spared. Achieving a feast of 300 kilograms of meat is no easy feat, and it would certainly be a nearly impossible task for a lone wolf. This is why, like domestic canids, these energetic predators often prefer a placid life in packs. Unlike killer whales, the social structure of Arctic wolves is much more primitive. Here, the pack leaders are the mated pair, followed wherever they go by their young. Both young adults and young pups accompany their parents on their journeys, forming families of, on average, 8 individuals. Being well equipped with a large family can be key to surviving in harsh Alaska, especially since, as extremely territorial animals, these canids must defend a territory averaging 30 square kilometers from their fellow canids. The reason the cunning Arctic wolf strives so hard to conquer a large territory is as simple as it is instinctive: the need for food. The larger the pack's domain, the greater the chances of finding succulent prey along the way. With a voracious appetite that sometimes demands more than 5 kilos of meat a day, the herd of mammals goes out in search of food, traveling up to 10% of their territory daily, because sometimes it's not always so easy to find a succulent morsel. When hunger strikes and prey is nowhere to be seen, the pack is forced to undertake a long trek to the limits of its territory. However, this is not a comfortable position for them, and they must maintain their senses sharpened, because when they find themselves in a border zone, a deadly confrontation with a neighboring pack over the need for food could erupt in the blink of an eye. Arctic wolves generally prefer to wait until the sun sets before hunting. under the cover of the moon, when they spot a potential prey in the distance, the pack communicates by howling to signal the start of the hunt. The attack technique will depend on the animal in front of them. If it's small prey like rodents, a stealthy approach will suffice, followed by a surprise ambush. Whereas if the battle is against a formidable animal like caribou, the strategy is based on chasing it until it's exhausted, then, in a brutal collective attack, immobilizing it while they grab their intended victim by the neck. Once they have secured prey, it is the dominant couple who lead the feast, leaving the most nutritious portions such as viscera and internal organs for themselves, and secondarily for the cubs, while the young adults settle for any scraps of meat they are allowed to consume. This is why, although the security offered by a pack is undeniable, when a young wolf reaches sexual maturity, between 2 and 4 years of age, it decides to leave the comfort of home. Both males and females can live alone for an indefinite period of time, until they find a mate with whom they can form their own pack and become the group leaders. Perhaps for a solitary individual, hunting is a more complex activity, especially when it's the first time they hunt without the support of their ancestors. However, as the world's largest canid, standing 85 centimeters tall at the shoulders and weighing over 40 kilograms, countless prey are at the mercy of this wild canine. Although large ungulates like moose and caribou pose a danger to a lone wolf, as they will not be swallowed without a fight, other prey such as birds, rodents, and even fish are nothing more than a rich meal for the hungry predator. So while it manages to form its own family of skilled hunters, this savage dog must content itself with inflicting the terror of its bite alone, with no company except its unfortunate victims, who sense their imminent end upon hearing a resounding howl in hostile Alaska.